Top of the morning to you. I hope you're all fine and dandy and staying ahead of the game. Remember, it is a game, and each one of us must play our part. Welcome. What we're going to do in this recording today is, or what I'm going to do is read Comyns Beaumont's book here. Get the title right. There's a few times I've mentioned it in the past and I get muddled up with the title because it's a big title. But this book is worth getting. Comyns Beaumont, The Great Deception, Syria, Britain and the Roman Conspiracy. It is packed with information. It is a treasure trove of historical evidence, facts, gathered from many historians. This is a great book, and there's lots of good books out there. Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett, a lot of good books by them. Gary Biltcliffe, Carolyn Hoare. There's there's a number of great books out there. But today, and you can find those books on my Facebook page, links to them, so whatever. But today we're going to look at chapter 6, Alexander and Macedonia. And the reason why I'm reading it out, I know people like Ged have done recordings of it, but the reason why I'm reading it out is because I mapped the heavens. So as I came across this book around about 2016, 2017 I think it was, and then somebody gave me it, I think it was in 2019, when I first came across this book, I'd already mapped most of the heavens over Scotland, and so I was seeing the stories of Hercules, Leonidas, all these different stories in the heavens written over the United Kingdom in 3 parts, in Scotland, in the Midlands, and then in the lower parts, which is the Nile, which is the Thames, London. And so I'd already seen all this and mapped things in the heavens, and then when I got this book it all made sense. A great catastrophe, a huge flood, comets. For a long time I'd been a flat earther, so the comet thing, as I was reading about the comet, I thought that couldn't be possible, but it is possible because I've witnessed comets. I see comets, quite regular. What they are I don't know, but they're falling from the firmament, from probably fallen angels. I don't know. I believe they could be fallen angels, but comets do exist. But according to Comyns Beaumont in this book, the comets struck the earth and changed the landscape, changed the climate, and basically everybody moved, and royal families of Europe have came in and rewritten the history which we once taught to our children about the heavens. And so this book really opened up my understanding of what I've been studying for years in relation to standing stones and waterways, because his book was packed with information about ancient waterways, and he talks about the Romans being here quite a bit, what the Romans did and what they didn't do. So it's a great book, and I know people like Ged have read out of it, but I want to interject my own thoughts as I go through it, and I want to try and make it available for people who can't afford it, because it's an expensive book. It's £60 at least for the book. I haven't seen it any cheaper. Maybe you can get it cheaper, but it is, even the price of £20–30 for a book can be expensive for people. So I'm going to read this chapter, and it's packed with stuff. If you're British, if you're Scottish, if you're Irish, if you're Welsh, if you're from Europe, if you're American, if you're Canadian, if you're from anywhere in Europe, or your ancestry is from anywhere in Europe, then I'm going to attempt to read this. It's quite a difficult book to read, but it's worth listening to. If you can, as long as I don't butcher it, and I manage to read it clearly, then whoever listens to it, whoever takes this information in, will greatly appreciate it. And it's a book that I keep going back to. I now have it in PDF copy, but I did have it for a number of years thanks to a friend, and I had it in paper copy, and I devoured that book. I've read it every day, because there's nuggets in it, powerful pieces of truth just oozing out of it. So let's get on with chapter 6, and what we're looking at is Alexander the Great and Macedonia, and what we're going to ask is, where is Macedonia, who was Alexander the Great, and yeah. Chapter 6, Alexander and Macedonia. O the grand old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. Of the period of Alexander, unhappily little survives in the way of authenticated history, ancient history, relating to his remarkable career. It is an extraordinary fact that for over 300 years, until Arrian and Curtius wrote works purporting to describe his expedition, nothing apparently was written of him. Both these men, highly distinguished, lived from about the middle of the 1st century AD to its end, and although 7 books of Arrian remain fairly intact, of Curtius, 10 books, the first 2 are lost. The remainder reveal considerable gaps or deletions of events, suggesting the work of a censor at a later date, as in the very many other cases. Curtius must be suspected of having described movements or events which embarrassed later authorities. Arrian, for his part, wrote in a colloquial style, imitating Xenophon, with the difference that Xenophon knew Sirius personally, whereas Arrian was dependent on such records or extracts as he could collect and whose accuracy we cannot check. One might have supposed that Josephus, who covers a wide field, would have had something more to say of Alexander, who previous to going to Babylon had visited Jerusalem, where the high priests and elders met him in a tumultuation outside the city, when, to their surprise and relief, he venerated the high priest's mitre with the name of the deity inscribed in gold. Yet Josephus dismissed his going to Babylon in a few words. All this is significant when we consider that Alexander overthrew the long-held Persian domination of the ancient world, and went as far east as is India, and as far south as to build the city of Alexandria. It constitutes a mystery that so famous a figure, who, like his father Philip II, was a great patron of learning, was educated by Aristotle, and surrounded himself with scholars, was yet apparently ignored and almost forgotten for over 3 centuries. The explanation may be that his movements and conquests were too revealing for those who object. It was to prevent any geographical or historical description which might throw another light on the past and prejudice the aims they had in view. Alexander's first great battle was by the river Granicus in Perga, Hanover, and from there he pursued Darius Comyns into Asiatic Cilicia, where he gained another overwhelming victory over the Persian, who fled, leaving his mother, wife, and children at Alexander's mercy. Some 2 years later, for the 3rd time, they met in the plains of Gaugamela in Assyria, Saxony, and again the Persian king fled. Alexander then visited Babylon, but not for long, as he set out again, this time to Media, Hungary, in pursuit of Darius, whom he followed into Parthia. The Partheni and Alani were Massageti, dwelling in the present Finland and North Russia. But once more Darius escaped him. After this, Alexander proceeded over the mountains, the Urals, then reached Bactria, Turkestan, and finally crossed the Hindu Kush, whence he descended to Indus. In India, he easily conquered the civilized the nations, the natives, who called the invaders the noble Katiya Arya, whence developed the Brahman caste, from intercourse with the Macedonian soldiery. His return march is uncertain, but he ultimately reached Ecbatana, the capital of Media, after 6 years' absence from when he returned to Babylon. He had proclaimed Babylon the capital of the Macedonian Empire, and had been there for some months when he died of pneumonia, after an illness of only 11 days, caused by a chill contracted when bathing. On his first visit he was received with the greatest demonstrations of enthusiasm by the populace, who thronged the walls, the streets, and the outside of Nebuchadnezzar's palace or castle. They strewed flowers, burnt frankincense, and loudly acclaimed him. The Chaldean and the Babylonian Magi met him, singing hymns of praise, and led him to the palace. Was he not of Chaldean birth himself, as a Macedonian? Were not his religious beliefs those of the Babylonians, despite his tolerance? It was natural and proper that they should honour a prince of their own blood, who had completely overthrown the tyrannical Persian kings. Alexander decided to rebuild Babylon. He was disgusted with the ruined state in which he found it, with the walls broken down and accumulated rubbish from the immense temple of Bel lying yet an enormous breach in the river which needed to be restored to its former channel. He issued orders for 10,000 men to clear the rubbish from the temple of Bel, and another 10,000 to restore the river to its former channel. How much of this was completed is not known. On his return from India, the Chaldean priest met Alexander outside the gates and ordered him not to enter the city except by the east gate, probably owing to some astrological prediction. All we know from the vestige of its history at this time is that it had a harbour with ships and shipbuilding in the yards, very unaccountable as relating to the alleged Babylon in Iraq. One curious piece of information has come down to us, giving the names of various embassies sent to Alexander when at Babylon to invoke his favour. They were European Scythians, Scots from the Perth area, Celtic and Iberian tribes, Comyns, Ethiopia, Mull, Carthage, Waterford region of the southern Ireland, Libya, Leinster of the North Ireland, Brute, Alaba or Albania, Stirling and the southwest of Scotland, Lucania, branch of the Bruti, Tyrone, Lancashire, Delphi, Bencruachan, Argyll, Ellis, Lismore Island, mouth of Loch Lynn, the Corinth, Crinan head of Cantyre, Argyll, and Epidaurus, south of Argyll. These are not conjectural sites, but all related to Britain. Not one hailed from the east. See that? Read all those tribes again. Not Greek, but British, Scottish, Irish. And when we come to consider the original situation of Macedonia, is it not what we should expect? What interest would the Celtic and Iberian tribes in the north of Europe have in a king proposing to make his capital at the other end of the world? Or the Bruti, or in fact any of them? The explanation comes from the original situation of Macedonia itself. These mainly North British tribes or clans, apart from those in Erin, were naturally anxious to know how their frontiers may be affected or might be affected by this intended great shift of the capital of Macedonia. They also naturally desire to enter into treaties with the victorious king, who was transferring his ruling from the city of Chaldea or Caledon to the Chaldee in the very south of Yorkshire, over 350 miles distant. Also, we should not overlook their anxiety in regard to the king's character. His father Philip, who had paved the way for his son's crushing victories by his unconquerable army, small in numbers but perfectly trained and equipped, was, for all his military genius, a cruel tyrant, and kept all the Greek states in a vassalage of fear. Was there a risk of Alexander doing the same? He was generous, impulsive, but disposed to intoxication and murderous passions, during which he had killed several of his nearest friends. The book of Maccabees throws a light on how he was regarded later. The land was silenced before him, and he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up, and he gathered together a very mighty army, and ruled over lands and principalities, and they became tributary unto him. 1 Maccabees 1, 3-4. Exalted. The editors of the Cambridge Maccabees analysed that word. Had he a psychological problem? Was he a mad genius? Alexander seems to have become intoxicated by his success. He appears to have even had a fatuous notion that he was divine. At all events, he encouraged the spread of a report that Jupiter Ammon had called him his son, and granted him the distinction of being the conqueror of the world. In accordance with this truly exalted conception of himself, he exacted divine honours, not only from the Persians, but from the Macedonians as well, and even ordered the philosopher Callisthenes to be put to death for refusing to prostrate himself before him. The character of Alexander the Great presents something of the nature of a psychological puzzle. There was evidently a process of degeneration which became more rapid as years went on. Alexander had coins minted showing his features relating to the god Hermes or Ammon, the most vital deity of the Britons or the Macedonians for this particular argument, superior in some respects even to Apollo, as Homer recognized, because he was the living deity, in the person of the arch-druid or arch-hierarch, who spoke as the Vox Dei to the entire Celtic world. If Nebuchadnezzar, as head of the Chaldeans, had been so ordained, it seemed extremely probable that Alexander was accorded such divinity in his turn, for regal claims to divinity were not uncommon. He would in such circumstances be justified in expecting Callisthenes to prostrate himself as others did. Alexander, who had utterly destroyed the Asiatic Persian tyranny which had enslaved the West for so long, deserved deification, if any monarch did, from his own people, the Chaldeans. The Macedonians. When Querim of Nineveh, from distant Ophir, dirty British coaster with a salt cake smokestack. And this is Cargos, John Macefield, in the footnotes there at the bottom. There are other outstanding facts relating to the Macedonians that are of considerable importance, for they clearly reveal that they were of Caledonian origin. I'll read that again. There are other outstanding facts. There are other outstanding facts relating to the Macedonians that are of considerable importance, for they clearly reveal that they were of Caledonian origin. The Macedonians, Alexander the Great. It is known to the all Bible students that the name of Het, that's been written wrong. It is known to the all Bible students. Yeah, it didn't make sense, did it? Sorry, folks. It is known to most Bible students that the name of Het, related to the Macedonians, as well Waddell states, was corrupted into the word Hittite, later Chetim, and possibly Shittim, which variations refer to Shet, Thet, otherwise Shetland, as the place of origin. So I'll read that again. There's an error there. It is known to the all Bible students. Yeah, that's an error. Anyway, it's known to most Bible students that the name Het is related to the Macedonians, and as Waddell states, don't know where, but anyway, as Waddell states, was corrupted into the Hittites, the later the Chetim, and possibly Shittim, which variations may refer to Shet, Thet, otherwise Shetland, as the place of origin. There is no doubt as their importance in the evolution of the civilization. Het was accounted the son of Canaan in one passage, but as Chetim are called the sons of Javan, son of Japheth, earliest of all the patriarchs in Genesis 10:2-4. When Abram seized the land of Canaan and built Hebron, apparently sons of Het had preceded him. He was buried beside Sarah, his wife, in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, a Hittite which Abram purchased of the sons of Het. Abram rode roughshod over the Philistines, or Mitzraims, the Mitzraymites, in those parts, took their cities and extracted tribute from them, but compensated the sons of Het for the fields of Ephron. The Hittites, or the Chatim, were the most active and important nation in the southwest, especially from a maritime point of view. Ships of the Chatim shall afflict Ashur, as prophesied by Balaam in Numbers 24:24. They had a great deal to do with the metal trade also. Cyprus was an important naval base of theirs, to enable ships of Chatim to intervene when needed along the lines of sea communication. Cyprus produced copper, but eventually the original Cyprus was destroyed in a huge earthquake and became derelict. It was then called Ophius Island, Isle of Serpents, meaning earthquake, volcanic eruption, lightning, etc. I have identified this island as one of the Isles of Chatim, surviving yet as Lundy, 16 miles off the west coast of Cornwall, today a mass of meteoric debris. It is perhaps interesting to record that when Alexander the Great was besieging Tyre, he prevented the Tyrians from sending their women and children by sea to Carthage. This was no Mediterranean manoeuvre. Tyre is represented today by Portland and by Melcombe Regis, Dorset, both extremely ancient. The Tyrans wanted to send their women and children to a distant county, Waterford, in southern Ireland, the original Carthage, but the Chatim, or Macedonians, from their rocky island, Ophius, intercepted any ships which dared to pass that way. Ophius or Lundy commanded the approaches both from the English and the Bristol Channel. The name Chatim came to be used as a synonym for the lands of the West, but it referred to the Macedonians. Their true appellation, as Waddo is at great pains to specify, was Kati. Hence the Isles of Chatim were also called Cassiterides, Isles of the Cassi. He throws another curious sidelight on their adjective by claiming with his long study of Indian antiquities that the Brahmins of India believed in their descent from the original white men, the Aryan caste, Kati Arya, who colonized their country for a while. They were Ari or Arya in ancient Pali, the noble ones. They were the Macedonians, led there by Alexander. We retrieve the name Kati or Kati in Caithness and in the Don Valley and elsewhere, whence came the original Chaldeans or Caledonians, the lion race, the cat, the Kati or cats, including the Thracians and or the Macedonians. So what he's saying here is the name, it's interesting because we have motorcycles called Ducati. So I have family who are Cassis. And my family have often asked, wondered, they think they're Spanish, and I suppose that we are. We are the Gael, the Gaul, so we could be Spanish. But the Kati, or Cassi people, the name Katim, which is, the Katim is Hittites. It comes from the name Caithness. And it says here, we retrieved the name Kati or Kati in Caithness and in the Don Valley and elsewhere, whence came the original Chaldeans or the Caledonians. The lion race, the Kati or the cats, included the Thracians and or the Macedonians. So I have family who are trying to trace who they are, but we're actually Caledonians, Macedonians. That's who we are. That's who the other side of my family are. Not me, blood-wise, one of my uncles, who is a Cassi, and cousins and so forth. So, very interesting. So, the famous latter people were descended from the Edians, whose territories originally embraced eastern Scotland from the Moray Firth to the mouth of the Tay, hence the name Mac, son of Edons. Their religious head was Gad, or God, Hermes, chief hierarchy or archdruid, whose city was Ur of the Chaldees, or Samothrace, in southern Orkney. This people sent colonies to southern England and to Gadis, or Sodom, Avonmouth, Somerset, called Hitti, or Chattim, even before Abram and Lot reached those same parts. If any existing people can claim to be Atlanteans, it is these Caledonians. The ancient clan Catan still flourishes. Among its chiefs is the Macintosh of Macintosh, whose estates stretch from Petty to Lochaber, and whose claims descend from Het, sons of Canaan. Such is recorded in the Iona Club transactions, which contains the pedigrees of most ancient Scottish clans. Long ago the Macintosh dwelt at Tor Castle at Inverlochy, today a crumbling ruin, yet famous as the site where Banquo, whose ghost so troubled the usurper of Duncan's throne, was murdered by Macbeth. On the other hand, the Macphersons of Cluny claimed to be the senior branch of the clan Catan, and from exhaustive evidence contained in a recent work, the chiefs of the clan Macpherson, this seems to be indisputable. In any case, whether the titular honour rests with the Macphersons of Cluny or Macintosh, both of the same noble blood as the Macedonians, who have dwelt in their motherland for possibly over 5,000 years. It is a staggering but also elevating thought of a clan that has played its part over so many great periods of past, and Scotland can claim others of this most ancient pedigree. The fact that the Macphersons and Macintoshes of Clan Catan are still dwelling in or about their ancient domains and still a virile and commanding people should give us understanding of the reality of the past in relation to the Macedonians, so wrongly relegated to parts of the Balkans. Tor Castle has laid in ruins for centuries, but ages before it was erected, the sons of Het, the Chatti, ventured from the north to the regions of Ogbashan in Gloucestershire and became widely known as the Hittim or the Chettim, as Gadites to the later Jews. They were worshippers of Apollo and ruled by their druids. They were men of stern discipline and brave soldiers against whom the Persians collapsed. If Alexander had not died so early and his greedy generals had not broken up the Macedonian Empire, the world's history subsequently would have been very different. This relocation of the Macedonians may give us the answer to the vexing problem of their early coinage. Authorities such as Sir John Evans, Hawkins, Ackerman, Post and others have never been able to explain why a great many primitive British coins are Macedonian in idea and design, and stigmatise them as abase or degraded imitations of the stator or Philip of Macedon. Evans puzzled to account for their apparent relationship, and as to the reason which impelled the Britons to strike coins on a Macedonian model, argued that there was a diffusion of gold status in the reign of Philip II, owing to the discovery of gold at Cnidus in the Pangaean mountains of Macedonia, and that the barbarians of Britain imitated the Macedonian type. In his reign, gold was extensively mined in the Pangaean mountains and brought him in a revenue of over 200,000 per annum. Incidentally, no sign of the gold workings has been discovered in the mountains of Macedonia, nor does the stratum lend itself to such likelihood. Evans admitted that British Macedonian coins were not slavish imitations and showed innovations. No doubt of the derivation of the stater, he said, possibly an original type, and probably the carefully dressed hair was one of the attributes of Apollo Belinus of Gaul and Britain, whose head it is supposed was represented. There is little doubt that Apollo Belinus was used to decorate the coins of the Britons, whose king took the name of the god as their title, as Kunu Belain and Cassi Belain, corrupted by the Romans into Belenus. Nor is there any doubt that there were designs independent of Philip II, for their base or barbaric type crude as they were, dated from a period long anterior to Philip, who unified the coinage and designed it artistically upon the earlier models. Macedonian history, reconstructed as Caledonian in origin, explains the object of the designs with the striking astronomical symbols they represent. They may be compared with the ancient engraved stones such as the Golpe stone. Both early British and Philippine coins make great play of the sign Pegasus in accordance with the Chaldean knowledge of astronomy. Studies of these coins reveal Pegasus as a sign of the zodiac on the earliest models, occupying the sign later allotted to Aquarius. The coins not only exhibited the sun and moon, but also twin cometary bodies identified by the spectacles designed to represent revolutionary movements from sign to sign. The intention was plainly a pious reminder from Druid-led world that the deity Apollo, representing Sirius, also shown on the observed side, destroyed the world by a celestial body or bodies which traditionally were first observed in the sign of Pegasus, a sign later changed to Aquarius, with his urn to record for all ages that then occurred the great catastrophe, the flood that afflicted the ancient world, and especially Scotland. Macedonian coins of the Philippine age have been found at many places in the British Isles. A parcel of coins of Macedonian kings of Syria was discovered on the southwest coast of Ireland early in the 18th century. Macedonian British coins were unearthed at the oddly Essex, which Evans said was similar, both obverse and reverse, to the stater of Philip. At Uriconium near Droitwich, once an important Romano-British city, coins described as a degraded imitation of the stater of Philip were unearthed with Roman coins of the Hadrian age and earlier, as in many similar instances. The most interesting was a find of coins of Philip of Alexander and of the Bruti on the estate of Cairnburg, Aberdeenshire, in 1824. The Adoni territories were in the actual Macedonia itself, and this in conjunction with the coins of the Bruti who dwelt in southwest Scotland, which suggests that the owner collected them from British sources in the reign of Alexander himself, or not much later. Before coin money was invented, gold, silver and brass rings were recognised medium of exchange. In Egypt, are fresco paintings on tombs showing people bringing tributes in bags containing gold and silver rings, and vases have been found depicting persons wearing gold and silver rings. Lindsay says of Ireland that the great quantities of gold, silver and brass rings have been dug up at various times. They were used as money, graduated according to Troy, weight in multiples of 12, not 10. He records a find of brass rings that fully loaded a large cart discovered in Tumulus in County Monaghan, indicating the antiquity of this medium for purchasing power in the British Isles. One other matter deserving of our attention in relation to the antiquity and the origin of the Macedonians is their national emblem, the unicorn. Daniel described Macedonia symbolically as a he-goat with one horn. The first Macedonian king traditionally made the unicorn his ensign and designated his capital Aig, or the goat's town, and the son of Alexander the Great by Roxanne was named son of the goat, the beast being generally represented with one long straight horn, later in appearance like a horse with similar straight horn. Alien, in his natural history, said the woolly rhinoceros existed in Britain in far prehistoric days like the mammoth or the woolly elephant. It remains, having been found under the drift deposit. To this day, the unicorn rampant is one of the supporters of the royal coats of arms, facing the line rampant. And prior to the Union, the Royal Arms of Scotland carried a unicorn rampant as a supporter on each side. It wants some explaining away. Altogether, therefore, in origin, history and activities, supported as they are in nomenclature, in classical history, in geography, in coinage, and finally in that strangely characteristic emblem of the unicorn, The Macedonians appear to fill the role of the ancient Caledonians of Scotland, who remain to this day one of the leading characteristic people of the world. Although unhappy in numbers so limited through force of circumstances, it is therefore any wonder that the Babylonians of York hailed Alexander the Great as their monarch.